Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate that very much. We are going to bring on our guest, Shane Jett, here in just a second. Michael is doing Michael things. And so Mike will not be joining us on this podcast today. But you've got Shane and me, and that's what you've got. So I'm going to bring on our Senator Shane Jett. Good morning, sir. How are you? Afternoon,
I'm
sir.
good.
Sorry, sir. So where's Waldo?
So I am in the state capital of Illinois, controlled by Democrats. They have their virtue signaling, a gay pride flag proudly atop the state capitol. I'm sure Abraham Lincoln was spinning in his grave. But we're doing a whirlwind tour of 7 states, 5 state capitals. We went to the Ark experience, Noah's Ark in Kentucky, and then the Creation Museum. And then we're just going through and meeting all the conservative Republicans in these beleaguered states with super minority parties and just saying, hang in there, and just loving on Republicans, conservatives around the United States. It's been great.
Now, is this you and all the girls, or you and...
Yes.
Really? You took all the girls? They didn't want to go to like a water park or Colorado or something?
So we are all aspiring nerds in the Jett household, so we absolutely love the architecture and the history. But we also went by and we would go to national parks, so we went through the Mammoth Cave. Spoiler alert, there are no mammoths in the cave. I was disappointed. Apparently it's just a really large cave, no mammoths, so no woolly elephants.
I was going to find something to go, but I decided no, I'm not going to go. So, I don't know why I thought about this the other day, but I did. We have an animal in common, you and I. You remember what it is?
Otters.
Otters. You love otters, and I studied them in college.
That's right. And you got a great picture of one that I haven't seen yet, but I think you told me that you got a picture of one at one time.
I know, but I don't even know where it is. I'll have to go back and look. No,
hey, do I need my screen up and down or horizontal?
No. You're good. You're good. I might even be able to make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so you're going on this whirlwind tour of all of these legislators and with your girls.
That's right.
Oh my goodness, you're cracking me up. Well, you have isn't the middle one like now your executive assistant?
So she's not my executive assistant, but she has been my my intern, and she's also the media intern for the Freedom Caucus. So if you've been seeing our videos that we come out, it opens the same way. We've got our branding, we've got our logo, we've got all of the captions with the bill numbers that are being referenced. All of that is done by Esther, my 16-year-old.
She's quite proficient at it, as she was helping Roberta and I last session.
Yeah, she
Helping us
loves
get a
it.
video. She's quite proficient. Okay, so I want to chat with you, and I think other people had wanted to talk to you about this as well. So what are your thoughts about last session, just particularly? I mean, not like just that session. What are your thoughts?
Well, there were things that I didn't like. I think most taxpayers don't like the ravenous appetite and the insatiable desire for more and more of their tax dollars. So that was frustrating. And the continued, preference that are given for request bills that are requested by lobbyists or state agencies, and the way they seem to be dismissive if a bill comes from actual taxpayers. They're like, what? Is this and there so that is status quo. I don't like that. I don't think the voters and taxpayers of Oklahoma like that. So we saw more of the same of that, but we also saw some very hopeful signs. And so what I did like about this session is, if you compare it to last year, so in 2024, whenever Senate leadership spent $250,000 trying to unseat me, during that legislative session, we had on average 4 to 5 conservative votes against a lot of the spending bills or lobbyist request bills, types of things that do not resonate with the Freedom Caucus core conservative values, smaller government, increased liberty, those types of things. There was 4 to 5. So it was me, it was Senator Dahm, it was Dusty Devers prior, it was Jake Merrick, and Hamilton. We were the core that was voting against these bills. And if you fast forward to this legislative session, we would consistently, from 4 to 5 conservative votes previously, we were putting 12 to 15 conservative votes. So, of course, we'd replaced McCourtney with Jonathan Wingard down in Ada. We replaced the Senator Garvin with Senator Sacchieri, a staunch conservative, quite a contrast. So we
Quite a
had,
contrast.
yes. We actually have an actual Republican from that
Yes.
district. That was nice. And so then we also had, we even had that during the election cycle. We lost Kevin Wallace and replaced him with an incredible, stalwart, conservative warrior in the trenches with Representative Jim Shaw. So I would say that, as frustrated as I was with the status quo that continued, I saw conservatives who were rising to the challenge. And here's the thing that the Freedom Caucus has made a tremendous difference is often when you get scorecards or conservative groups that would analyze the voting in the legislature, they are post facto chastising someone for voting against core conservative values. Often, many of those legislators would say, had it been explained to me in this way, had I had time to fully delve into the deluge of bills that come so quickly, I would have voted correctly. And I wished I'd had known this nuanced information prior to voting, and I would have voted accordingly. So there's a lot of frustration with people who knock doors. They are conservative in their core and they believe in conservative values, but they don't vote in those because they often get tricked by either the author or by the simple volume of information they have to plow through to get to that yes or no decision. What the Freedom Caucus has provided is we do the analysis on the front end. We present our yes or no recommendations based on the core conservative values that all of us said we ran on. We provide that on the front end. So if you're sincere about legislating like you campaigned, you can actually do that before the vote instead of after the vote. And so that was exciting. Here's another thing that was very exciting.
Hold on one second.
Yes, go ahead.
What? If in doubt, vote no.
That's right. If in doubt, vote it out. We do that to Ryan. So I say that to my members. If in doubt, vote it out. So yeah, but sometimes a bill would be presented in one way, and then we realized after the fact it was presented in conservative context intentionally to deceive us. And so John Hayes gets to do that a couple times, and we figure him out. Sorry, I'm speaking.
Well, honestly, Shane, what does it matter at this point?
At this point, my allegiance is not to made up fake rules designed to keep us in line. My allegiance is to the taxpayers who are being deceived and disappointed daily by the legislature, who is more interested in running legislation by lobbyists and legislation by legislative liaisons, which are taxpayer funded state agency lobbyists, than they are about representing their district. And if you remember one of my debates this year, I said, show me that Senate district where every door you knocked, a lobbyist opened the door and you gave them a solemn promise to represent them and their clients. Or show me that Senate district where every door that you knocked, a state agency head opened the door and you promised to represent them and their state agency. But that district doesn't exist. And what I really want to know is, does your constituents know that you're representing those agencies and those lobbyists and not them? Because that's the district you knocked in.
Did they give you even a bill this year?
They gave me one.
You got one.
And I will tell you,
how many did you file?
I was actually conservative. I didn't file as many as the year before, the one before that. I only filed 59 pieces of legislation.
Okay.
And I have 11 years of legislative experience.
0.05% of your legislation was.
Yes, ma'am. And
wow, okay.
So some of them, I think they heard intentionally to kill them so that they could permanently kill them for a 2-year period.
Yeah,
right. So that strategically happens. They did that to Senator Bullard last year, heard his bill, and people that we knew was opposed to the bill voted for it because they were going to be on the ballot. And those who may have been in favor of it weren't going to be on the ballot. So they were trading their votes to make sure that they could kill it. And give plausible deniability to the rhinos who were traditionally opposing it, especially when we're talking about COVID protections.
Catherine has a question. Whoops, hold on a second. Who is they? Is that due to that McCall rule change?
So they, to be very clear, is Senate leadership and House leadership. So those who are making decisions about what is heard in committee, what gets priority, what gets killed, happens at the President Pro Tem level, which is Lonnie Paxton, the floor leader, which is Julie Daniels, and then their leadership team. So those that are in power, they get to assign us committees, remove us from committees, let our legislation be heard or not. Those are the power brokers that basically create the deference and decorum requirements that says, oh, you're supposed to notify us. It's all about control at the end of the day. And I answer to 90,000 constituents. You used to be one, Madam Mayor, in my district, and I don't care what the others think.
One of your constituents, oh my gosh, I just got here, start over. Sorry, Roberta, come on time.
Hi, Roberta. She is amazing down in Macomb, Oklahoma, and she is making a difference. And we appreciate the work that she does down there.
She absolutely is. And there's no stopping Roberta.
No,
as you well know.
I pity the fool who tries to.
I pity the fool. That's exactly right. Okay, so we're finally getting some. Oh, and she's telling you hello. We're finally getting some population here. It's harder in the afternoon because people are usually used to us being on at 9. So I think there are people now finally going, oh gosh, I need to tune in now. So I have to say, it's been hard for me since doing this new format of podcast and thing. You know, I used to be, as you well know, just very education focused. And now I'm in like so many different areas that it's hard for me to keep up with things. But I want to find out, I kind of want you to help me here. What happened on the last legislative day in the Senate?
So the last legislative day, we had a House bill that was sent over ostensibly to provide compensation for military. But what it really was, and what everyone knew it was a bill to enhance the compensation and the potentiality of Representative Chris Kennedy, a noted rhino in the House, a non-Republican, only registered as such. Yeah, I said that. Who was basically having other people to run legislation to enhance his ability to become the adjutant general of the state of Oklahoma, and that the compensation also reflect that. I had extensive conversations with the military department about this. There was no doubt in anyone's mind that that was happening. And what was also happening was a tremendous flex by the judiciary chairman to demonstrate that he had the power to shut down the entire House and Senate, because he was able to control that number of people, including, unfortunately, the Speaker of the House. That was what was going on. And so
Now,
those
who's the
bills,
judiciary chairman?
that's Chris Kennedy,
Okay.
the one who raised a tremendous amount of money from trial attorneys to get rid of conservatives in the 2018 bloodbath. They brought in a
Yes.
lot of the educrats who came in after that period, re-registered from Democrat to Republican to run as pretend Republicans. A lot of them are serving currently. So you want to know what's going on? That's what's going on. Everyone's afraid of Chris Kennedy. I am not. They spent over $280,000 in just independent expenditures, got 3 candidates recruited against me. And in a 4-way Republican primary, my people who know I go in there every day fighting for them elected me without a runoff. So you can.
Well, he's finished though. I mean, he only
He's
has
got
one more
next
session.
year. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But
And then
everyone's
he's
afraid
done.
of his ability to raise money from trial attorneys who traditionally have never supported Republicans.
Yeah. No, I mean, yes. So that was
what was going
biggest
on that night is they held that vote open for 5 hours, trying to get people to agree to vote because they were afraid if they didn't pass Kennedy's bill, with his name's not on it. A lot of people run bills. They have their friends to run it that help themselves out so that they have plausible deniability. Nobody was fooled. We all knew what was going on.
Well, when I saw the bill originally, his name was on it as House author.
Yeah, I think it was removed, though. I think they put other people's names. I have to double check that. I know
Because somebody called my attention to it and said, do you feel like this is odd that this man would run a bill that would ostensibly help his career?
Yes, they do it all the time, but they have their friends to run it for them. But they also think that if they get away with it, then it's not a conflict of interest. I raised conflict of interest that same night, if you recall. And
yes.
A third of the left end of the Republican caucus decided to berate me and Governor Stitt about it. So effectively violating the rules that they thought I had violated. But if you go back and look at the transcript, I asked a question. Is this true? And if so, is it a conflict of interest? And if it's a conflict of interest, should you recuse yourself?
But that was on another bill, though.
That was the bill immediately following. Yes, that is correct.
So let's get to that one. Let's get to that one. But Catherine asked you another question. Did that bill help secure Kennedy's future?
So I think the only snowball's chance for Kennedy to become the Adjutant General of the state of Oklahoma is if he gets a fellow Rhino Republican, a Democrat who registered Republican to get elected to AG, who becomes the governor of the state of Oklahoma. And then you will have 2 birds cut from the same feather, both of them attorneys, both of them are misleading the Oklahoma public, pretending to be Republicans, and we all know they're not.
You mean Gettner Drummond?
I precisely mean Gettner Drummond.
Yes. Okay. That's what I love about you. You just will not. I mean, honestly, I'm so tired of that whole, well, Reagan says that we do not, what's the first commandment? Thou shalt not speak ill of other legislators or whatever. What was that quote of Reagan?
Yeah, thou shalt not speak ill of fellow Republicans.
That was it.
But here's the thing. Somebody, I forgot who it was, in World War II, I believe, asked a soldier how it felt to kill a human being. And he says, well, I wouldn't know. I've only killed communists.
There are a couple. Hold on.
I will follow up to that. I think that rule applies if they are actual Republicans. There is no one in the state capitol that has any doubt that Gettner Drummond is a Democrat rebranded, and Chris Kennedy is a Democrat rebranded.
So Amber says, so the worry is that he, meaning Kennedy, will behind the scenes raising money going forward, even when he's out of office, and still go after conservative legislators.
Absolutely, but let's take a look at it. And somebody needs to run these numbers and these ratios. If you're looking at the amount of money that was spent on the Chandler race with Representative and Chairman of the Appropriations Committee, Kevin Wallace, against Jim Shaw, or you look at the amount of money that I spent against the 280,000 independent expenditures by Senate leadership and their cronies, or you look at how much was spent with Greg McCourtney with against Jonathan Wingard. It's roughly a 4-to-1 or 6-to-1 ratio that establishment money gets beat by grassroots money at a 6-to-1 or 4-to-1. So 40,000, we spent a little over $40,000 in our race against the 280 independent expenditures, not counting what the other three candidates were spending, and we still won. So what I would encourage those of you who are out there that are conservative, you don't have to raise this much money if you're embedded in your district, you're talking to your people, and they understand that you actually share their values and are not just pretending to be a Republican to get their vote.
Right. Okay, so they're under Susan says they're underhanded shenanigans going. Okay, so do you think John Eccles, this is from Jen Annie, do you think John Eccles will be a good AG?
So there are going to be at least 3 AGs. I think John is a fine attorney, and I'm not an attorney to make that assessment, but I hear good things. He has an extensive network across Oklahoma. He's been the floor leader for a long period of time, so he understands the inner workings. But as an attorney, what we're really looking for in the AG's office is his ability to enforce the law. Would be the highest law enforcement officer in the land. My concerns for any of the AG candidates is what is their commitment to taking on the federal government and the encroachment. And I can't really speak to that. I think John would be motivated to do a good job. I know that John O'Connor is contemplating running, I understand. I know that the Secretary of Energy under Stitt, Jeff Starling, is also running. He is an accomplished attorney. He's also the son-in-law of Larry Nichols, who was very instrumental in getting the Republican majority in the House in 2004 elected. So there's going to be a lot of powerhouses, but I think John Eccles is definitely the candidate to beat in this race. And I'm privy to information about another candidate that's going to announce that hasn't yet, who has an incredible pedigree and history. So I think the AG race and the governor's race are going to be the 2 biggest races to watch.
So how much of a backbone will they have standing up against the liberal attacks? And I do think, because I'm fairly certain, I'm not an attorney, don't play one on TV, don't sleep at the Holiday Inn. But what I do know, I'm pretty sure I know this, there's more to being AG than worrying about chicken, poultry farm runoff and marijuana grows. Am I right about that?
Absolutely, because when we saw John O'Connor suing the Biden administration and joining nationwide lawsuits that were pushing back against the abortion of babies and these types of things, these are core fundamental values that are vital. When Gettner Drummond came in, I didn't see him joining a lot of the lawsuits that I wanted him to do. I know there's a petition that we've requested him to investigate the deadly medical protocols that I sincerely believe was designed to punitively injure non-vaccinated COVID patients that were intubated and given remdesivir with a 50% kill rate whenever they were using remdesivir against the Ebola vaccine. There was enough medical information to be able to do a lawsuit for wrongful death and actually intentional homicide. And the Attorney General, who does not share our values, is deciding for whatever reason he has not taken up that lawsuit, but he did get into a national lawsuit about privacy related to 23andMe. And so I'm like, if you're interested in protecting privacy as it relates to our genetic information, how about going after the people that have cost Oklahoma lives, who are modifying their genetics by using a gain-of-function virus that is using the CRISPR technology to change our genetics and kill us with hypercancers and things like that. So I think his priorities reflect his values and, quite frankly, are misaligned with Oklahoma values.
Well, and then I'm going to jump a couple of comments here and go to this one by your constituent. The number of petitions across Oklahoma for investigation into DHS, he refuses to even acknowledge. And I do, and she also mentioned this too, enforcement is key. We have an extreme lack of enforcement across the board. And I think that's just, we've got to have an attorney general who's actually going to do these things. But I want to get back to you, because the other bill that happened on the Senate floor that day, other than Chris Kennedy's "please pay me more money and give me a better position" bill, was the one to get rid of the woman who was the head of the Oklahoma Mental Health and Substance Abuse Commission. And that turned into, well, there were people saying things on the floor. I mean, it literally became Shane Jett against everybody. How did that happen? And give us some background on that.
So the backdrop of that 5-hour wait is an important part of the debate that ensued. So basically, I was still in the room, in the Republican caucus room, whenever they brought that vote up. So there was no time to debate. We were running in to make that vote. I think they put it up quickly so that they could get through it and get it knocked out. I don't know if my absence on the Senate floor was the reason why they were pushing so hard. I wonder, but I didn't get a chance to debate on that. So if you notice, my comments was reflecting what we'd seen transpire over that 5-hour period. And during that 5-hour period, there were rumors and indication that people were imbibing in their own offices and coming on the Senate floor intoxicated. And so if you look at some of those decisions that were made, that's documented when votes would go red to green and back to or red to green to red and back to green, there was negotiation that were going on. If you look at the debate, because when I stood up to debate against that, one, I was opposed to the way they were doing it. The concerns about influence peddling, the concerns about having a spouse in that department that had not been disclosed during those proceedings. So we were being fed the same information that the media was peddling about what was going on in that department. Well, what you have to understand is that Ms. Friesen had come in to effectively try to clean up that department and was exposing these things. Some of the concerns were that there were contracts going out with no measurable ability to determine if the contracts were being reached, if measurable results were coming back from those. And so when you start messing with hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars of contracts that are being let out, it begs the question, why is there so much opposition to this? Why are we not asking the harder questions? And so it occurred to me as it became apparent that we didn't have all the information in front of us. And I intend to ask the hard questions that taxpayers have the right to, one, have asked, and two, answered. I asked those questions. Is it true that there's a spouse in this department? And the answer was yes. And Senator Racino answered that question. Then I asked, if that is the case, does it represent a conflict of interest? And if so, should you recuse yourself from that and allow someone else to run this legislation if there is a conflict of interest? He indicated that it was his right and his purview as the chairman over that, with oversight over that department, and that he explained to his satisfaction the minimal role that his wife played in that, and that it was his purview to move forward, and he didn't feel like it was a conflict of interest. And then everyone lined up to act like I had attacked his wife. Well, part of that backdrop was also the tweet that was sent out by Governor Stitt asking those same questions, and even more pointedly. Do you have something to gain with a wife having a contract on the House side with that department, and then another wife working inside the finance department, and implying maybe there was some wrongdoing? My question was simply, is it true that there are spouses involved? And if so, do you feel like it's a conflict of interest? That's a very legitimate question to ask. I would guess that the hue and cry and the you're attacking my wife speeches were already in the can. They just didn't know that I was going to ask the question and trigger that. So instead of them attacking Stitt and doing all the pearl clutching that went on and the audible gasp, I ended up being the lightning rod of that discussion. But here's the real question. For the people of Oklahoma, ask themselves this question. If a state senator can run legislation to remove your spouse's boss's boss, did that fact have any consideration whenever that spouse was asking for that job? Do you suppose in the evaluations that their immediate supervisor had to contemplate the fact that before I can be honest on an evaluation, I should contemplate the fact that their spouse is a state senator and consequently, literally, could run legislation to remove my boss's boss? So those types of questions, I think the public would say, that seems like a conflict of interest. And note, I didn't raise that question. I simply asked, is it true? And is it a conflict of interest? And if so, should you recuse yourself from running the legislation? It's like someone else doesn't have an appearance of evil. And backdrop, of course, was 5 hours of negotiating and flipping votes prior because somebody had a vested interest in a future job for a legislator who wanted to be adjutant general. So those questions all came to play. I will tell you this, I notified the sergeant at arms, according to Rule 5-5D of the Oklahoma State Senate rules, that there were members who were demonstrating the appearance of intoxication or inebriation. Notified the sergeant at arms. I was then told I was not the only one that had brought it to their attention, and that they had notified the President Pro Tem of the Senate and was awaiting instructions. I immediately went to the President Pro Tem, Lonnie Paxton. I read to him verbatim the rule, and he said he was aware and that he was taking action. And I said, the rules direct me to notify you. You have been notified. So I would argue that some of the overt cutting of deals was probably incentivized, or at least the inhibitions could have been contributed to or attributed to Tito's vodka. I'm just speculating at this point. But if you have had dinner with a number of senators, you know when they look inebriated, when they act inebriated, you know when they're elongating their vowels in their presentations or debates, and they don't usually do this, it looks suspicious. Okay.
It might have been Seagram's, by the way. It might not have been
Seagram's. It could have been Tito's. It could have been Wild Turkey. But here's the thing. It is in the interest of the interesting thing about that, whenever people are saying, I will cut your throat to protect my district, but family is off limits. Okay. The crazy thing is we were debating on whether or not to remove an appointed official to the state of Oklahoma, right? One of the things that you can be removed by the Constitution of the state of Oklahoma is by being inebriated or intoxicated. And I would argue that it was apparent to many of us on the floor, to the extent that I wasn't the only senator who was bringing it to the attention of leadership, that there were members on the floor who were inebriated or showing signs of intoxication. I would argue that some of those arguments and debates against me was fueled in part by alcohol. And
so let me run through some comments here.
Well, let me give you one more thing. Okay. The next day, actually, it's literally the same day, because we ended it after midnight on May 30th. That next day, I sent a request for legislation to codify Rule 5-5 state law. And they're calling that bill for next year, No Legislating While Drunk Act of 2026. No, go ahead. What's your question?
Okay, so as a federal government employee, I'm not allowed to drink while on the clock. And then John Boy says, how could that be of any concern? Roberta says, what is the rule or law about drinking or intoxication at the Capitol? Is the Capitol a dry place?
Yes, it is. It is a dry place. It is strictly prohibited from drinking on the Senate floor or being intoxicated by being on the Senate floor. It absolutely is prohibited, and everyone has the rules. They're aware of it. I have similar reports coming from the House of Representatives that the same thing is happening there. There are liquor cabinets that eyewitnesses have indicated they've discovered in Senate offices. It'll be fun to see who scrambles to go clean out their liquor closets now after this podcast. But that is the fact. And here's the thing: the people of Oklahoma have the right to expect their elected officials to represent them in a way that is dignified and reflects their fullest capacity, not to be incapacitated and making rules or cutting deals to pass legislation that are not in the interest of the public.
So Catherine Ann says, Murdoch repeating, would you believe 15 times? Melissa says, thank you, Senator, for saying something and holding the line. Intoxication is an impeachable offense. Is that true?
That is correct. And it was interesting that it was during the time we were impeaching somebody that it was so clearly apparent on the Senate floor. It was an embarrassment, quite frankly.
So now let me get this clear. So Senator Paxton, who is pro tem, is the one that's held to upholding that rule, correct?
And the floor leader specifically is tasked with it. But yes, the buck stops with the president pro tem.
Okay. And so he just decided that it wasn't important enough to make, I mean, has anybody been impeached for this? Or, I mean, are we just going to pretend it never happened? Or I'm just curious.
So I haven't fleshed out all of my legislation. No legislating while drunk, but it occurred to me to maybe put a provision in that we have a breathalyzer available to our sergeant of arms, so that if we have two or more witnesses that come forward, and they can either recuse themselves and go home by Uber, or they can breathe in the breathalyzer and then let the consequences fall where they may. So at the end of the day, I notified the pro tem, which is what I'm directed to do in our rules. And it was towards the end of session. Senator Paxton walked back and spoke to the Sergeant of Arms. Sergeant of Arms walked off the floor with his chief of staff immediately following. And then probably within the next 30 minutes, Jenny, we had adjourned sine die. So it was over. So if there's any follow-up that happens after the fact, I'm not privy to that. Whatever he was or was not going to do, I do not know. I do know that he immediately left. And if you want to go look at the video, you can see where at the very end of session, Senator Brenda Stanley was presenting her bill, I think for a veto override, and Senator Paxton walked right in front of her from where we were speaking, down camera from her. It walked right in front of her. She pulled her mic back so it didn't bump him while he passed her. So you can see that's exactly whenever that occurred. I think within 30 to 45 minutes we had adjourned. So, however he wants to follow up, had I had an opportunity to do so, I would have asked that the presiding officer remind the members not to violate Rule 5-5D. But that they were still in bills and it wasn't time to do that. And I did not get to make that request, because then that would have been documented on the Senate floor. But I did the following day request that a bill be drafted and press release drafted that we're going to codify into law a rule that is indicating you cannot be drunk, inebriated, or drinking on the Senate floor. And I would extend that to the House as well.
So Roberta was I think she's trying to make the point here, because she said, is this a law or a policy? This question is important. And basically you're saying it's a rule. And my thought, and I'm not the only one who has this thought, is that rules at the legislature are a whim. It's, however, if we want to follow them, fine. If we don't, whatever.
So I answered both of those questions two-part. First off, Senate rules are enforced by the floor leader, and so it's up to them how
Or
they want to
not.
enforce it. But if members come forward and say, these are the rules, in fact, there's been senators who have been known in the past to enforce the rules on their own volition. They'll come to a member and go, you're in violation of the rules. This is the rules, and you need to stop that. And so those senators have since retired, but that can be done when they bring up the rules. But what also can happen is you can bring up the rules to the presiding officer, who will have to rule on them. And I brought it to Senator Paxton, asking him to address the issue. It wasn't addressed to my satisfaction, but maybe he's lecturing or talking to them or reminding them of the rules. I haven't seen an email go out to that effect. But I don't expect that this is going to be swept under the rug, because it's inappropriate. So the first is the rules are there. They can be enforced. We can put pressure for them to enforce them, but it's up to leadership to do so. But the other thing is, it's not a law. It's in the Constitution that says you can remove members or impeach members based on intoxication. So
Interesting.
That's the reason why I filed the law.
Okay.
So that we go from it being a rule or a constitution to being a law in addition to the rule and the Constitution, so that any future leader of the House or Senate would be not only in violation of the rules, but would be in violation of their own law. And what I'd like to do is see if they would have the audacity not to hear that, to hold themselves accountable. And let's let the public weigh in on what do they think. Do you think that you and your constituents and your family are best represented whenever you have intoxicated members on the Senate and House floor voting for the taxes that you pay, the laws that you have to abide by, and think that those laws do not apply to them? And I think the public would have a very pronounced opinion on that. Not only that, but on the conflict of interest associated with senators who have the ability to fire people in state agencies and having their spouses work in those state agencies. I think the public have a right to, one, know it's happening, and two, have an opinion about that.
Somebody, your constituent again, says she happens to know a cabinet full of snacks. Maybe we all ought to go up to your office. Okay.
Oh, yes, I have snacks. You can thank my wife for that. We have 13 schools, or 13 cities in our district, and in that many, at least that many schools. And so when we have grade schoolers that come up, or even the high schoolers, my wife takes great pride and prioritizes making sure that there's a Ziploc bag of snacks for every high school kid that goes out from our office. So it's usually yogurt covered raisins and I think some fruit gummies and some peanut butter and crackers. So yes, Roberta's right. We have a store of snacks, and we're happy to share them with our constituents when they come up. But Anna doesn't let anybody go home hungry.
Okay, so Roberta says, or asks, how does an impeachment process begin and who initiates it?
So I believe the impeachment process has to start in the House and then moves to the Senate where it is approved. I can check those rules precisely to see how that happens. But as I understand it, it starts on the House side and then comes to the Senate for ratification, I believe.
Okay, well, Representative Banning is watching. He says, expel a member, not impeach a member, according to Article 5 of the state constitution.
Very good. And Representative Chris Banning has been fantastic to work with, a conservative on the I believe eastern side of the state. I've really enjoyed working with him. Thanks, Chris.
Can the citizens of Oklahoma request an investigation into this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Contact the AG's office, contact your House and Senate member, tell them this is what you'd like. You absolutely have the right. We, the people, are the pinnacle authority in the state, and we get our will when we make it abundantly clear that the overwhelming majority of the people in their district want this response. Yes.
Well, that's interesting. I'm glad you asked that question, Dorn, because I wouldn't have even thought about it. I kind of would have thought it was a done deal. So we can actually, well, I can't write my senator or representative because neither one of them pay any attention to me, but I can
They started paying attention whenever the appropriations chair for the House of Representatives lost his seat. That changes everyone's attention span when they realize they're accountable to their voters.
Well, no, because my senator is Grant Green Goblin, who has told people there's no videoing. So no, I don't think he's super interested in anything I have to say. So Marvin says, what was the disposition of the press release? I'm not sure what he's talking about. Do you know?
So he may be asking about the press release that I've requested to be drafted.
Okay.
In this case,
Okay.
I haven't finalized that press release. So if he has any recommendations of what should be included, I'm happy to take them under advisement. But the press release will basically be stating the facts that I am running this bill, but I'm going to let people speculate as to why.
Interesting. Okay. So Melissa wants to remind everybody that if she comes to work drunk, she gets fired.
Yeah, that's correct. And that's the appropriate response. And if you're making decisions about laws that we all live under, and we can't drive drunk, nor do we want to, you shouldn't be legislating while drunk.
Oh, Earl's daughter, she's been so good today. A sober mind is essential to do any job. Common sense has become subjective. That's very good. Okay, going back to Catherine, and she says, do you think every state is like this, or is Oklahoma especially bad? Any senator friends in other states say they have similar issues?
So I can't speak to the other states, but what I can speak to is human nature. And human beings will try to get away with what they think they can. And I also remind us that we are a new Republican state. We have been morphing. And at the end of the day, I think one of our founding fathers says that your representative government is the one you deserve. And so if we're not holding our representative government accountable, and we allow them to get away with misbehaving in a way that we do not approve of, if we do not show up at the ballot box, if we do not show up to their town hall meetings, if we do not meet with them, talk to them, communicate with them, then we get what we deserve. And I tell you, I'm very engaged with my Senate district, clearly, as demonstrated by some of the commentary. But I take very seriously the fiduciary responsibility, the faith that I have been given. I represent 90,000 people. I do not represent the state of Oklahoma. I represent my people to the state of Oklahoma, and I'm making it very clear. My job is to make sure the state of Oklahoma, with the powers and privileges that have been bestowed upon it by we the people, my constituents, that they never use that power to run over my people.
Well, hold on a second, though. But isn't caucus important? Don't we have caucus so you guys can come together and decide what's best for the whole Senate? I thought that was where the focus was inside and with each other and the relationships you have inside.
It can be, but at the end of the day, we keep our jobs if you, our constituents, give us your permission. And so the more we can connect the behavior of our elected representatives with their ability to satisfy our desire for representation that meet our values, the better their behavior is going to reflect our values.
So Roberta also says that Jim Shaw at an event last weekend said the House members were also intoxicated. So both chambers were having the same issue. And Dana says, Dana, unfortunately, is kind of like me. Rosino is my senator and Hill is my House rep. I won't waste my time asking for an investigation. They're both part of the problem up there. And Marvin says pathological personalities are attracted to positions of power. That's a lot of P's. We must take actions to mitigate this issue.
Yes, and where we take these actions is vetting candidates whenever they are running for office. We have to do a better job because they're just we have veterans who move in to Oklahoma, who settle here from other states, East Coast states. They don't reflect our values, but they can talk about our talking points as if they're Oklahomans. We've got to dig deeper than the fingernail thin veneer of conservatism and ask, when you were in Rhode Island or when you were in Pennsylvania, what were your policies and what is your ideology? And do they truly reflect the Oklahoma values, or are you just wrapping yourself in a flag and pretending to be a veteran? Because some of the veterans that I serve with were calling me out for attacking a veteran's wife. Are you kidding me? They were not reflecting Oklahoma values. So we have to be very careful that we don't let the veneer of patriotism prevent us from properly pursuing the truth behind somebody's candidacy.
Well, that's one of the things that we want to do at the upcoming Liberty Oklahoma conference is teach people how to vet their candidates. Because if you have a primary for Senate District 32, I'm just using a number. If you have 4 people running for office in Senate District 32, somebody there, if it's not the county GOP, somebody else better pick up the mantle and create a forum where you can literally ask these people questions and vet the holy heck out of them before somebody votes. Because you're exactly right. We are way falling down on that. We just go, oh, he was a veteran. Oh, he was a police officer. Oh, she was a teacher. And she's so cute. And then we are like, I mean, it's nuts. It's nuts.
Yep.
It's kind of funny, really. I just saw this. Oregon had a drag show performance in their House of Representatives this past week. It was really there. So I guess.
Well, I'm in the Illinois State
performance.
Yes, I'm in the Illinois State Capitol right now, and our tour at the tour guide, there was 3-panel display of LGBTQ propaganda and a rainbow flag at the top of the Capitol building, right below the American flag, and another flag I couldn't recognize, probably the state flag.
So Catherine wants to make sure everybody knows asking a pointed question is an attack. Major eye roll there. Roberta Lewis says pulling the military card should be the first red flag. Melissa says amen to vetting. Also sending reminders to our current elected officials to hold them accountable. I just handed Hilbert our new updated 2025 Republican platform, and it wasn't received very well. It implies that if you do not think as I do, you are wrong. There are plenty of service members that are not on our side. And Amber makes the point, if those candidates will show up, only Senator Dusty Deevers participated in the last one that they had there in Lawton. So outside of the fact that now you've helped us decide that we can contact our elected officials and ask for an investigation of the drunkenness that was obvious on the Senate and House floors, what else would you like us to know?
Well, I would encourage you to urge them to co-author my bill as a show of their support for not allowing members to legislate while drunk. And that will give you a good measure if they're serious about it or if they're just listening to you to placate you, hoping you'll forget and move on.
Legislating while drunk. That's kind of...
Yeah. Ask them to co-author my bill. That'll tell you if they're serious.
So here's a question. You have spent really quite a lot of time being on the opposite end of most of your colleagues. So you tend to be over here, and then your colleagues tend to be, many of them tend to be over here. So many people would say, I don't want to go do that. I don't want to be shunned. I don't want to be. What can you advise people who are thinking about running, who realize that they may be way more conservative than the people around them that also have R's on their name tags? What can you give them some hope? Can you give them some of your hard-earned expertise on how you hold your own in the Oklahoma State Legislature?
Yes, I love that question. First and foremost, they need to know who they are in their core, what they're willing to fight for, and what's negotiable. You need to have a relationship with Jesus Christ if you want to navigate that building with your integrity intact. And so, at the end of the day, I would say approach approach serving in the legislature as a mission field and approach serving in the legislature like you're signing up for battle. We talked a little bit about veterans, there's good veterans and there are bad veterans. At the end of the day, we all have an oath to the Constitution, and we all have an obligation to the people that we're fighting for. So when I swore an oath to the Constitution to be a Navy intelligence officer, my commitment was I'm prepared to kill or die for the principles I care about in my family and my nation. And I look at serving in the legislature the same way. It is, I'm going there to battle, to make sure, and it's not lethal battle, but it affects people's livelihood. I'm there to make sure that you're not paying more property tax. I can lower your property tax. I can lower your income tax. I can increase your freedom. And it's going to be a battle, because if I wanted to go to the state capitol and say yes to everybody who asked for more of your tax dollars, I would be very popular. I'd get plaques. I'd get endorsements. I would get mail outs to my district telling you what a great job I was doing for you. Those would
call Senator Jett and tell him what a great job he's doing.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. And those are both attaboys, but they're also sinister, because they can just as easily attack you, and they know that. Anytime they're sending a mailer out for you, they're reminding you they could have sent a mailer out against you.
Well, and it's propaganda for a lot of the ones that are getting them right now are the worst, some of the worst guys. So it's just propaganda, exactly right. And that's all it is.
So here's the thing, to put a fine point on the question that you're asking. It needs to be something that you're doing for principled reasons, and that you're willing to fight for it. And you mustn't forget who sent you up there, because you will knock doors on all of the people in your district, and you'll listen to them, and you'll share values, and you'll go up to the state capitol, and you won't see those people again until it's next election cycle, if you don't stay rooted and grounded in the values of the people who sent you. And then you will have lobbyists who'll take you to dinner and talk to you about their clients and their needs, and they'll try to co-opt you in trying to solve their problem. And their problem is only solved if you give them more of your constituents' hard-earned dollars, and it's not your money to give. So you've got to be grounded in scripture. You've got to be grounded in core conservative policies. Growing government costs your people money. Raising taxes costs your people money. Spending money costs your people their economic prosperity. Those types of things you have a clear idea on. People think I'm a conservative because I'm against killing babies. And that's very important. It's not the only issue that makes you a conservative. You've got to be conservative when it comes to growing state government, which erodes freedom.
And don't forget, the government never has any money, only what they take from us.
That's right. And they take from us in three distinct ways: taxing, borrowing, and inflation, which means spending. And the spending is the most insidious. Of course, that happens a lot on the federal level. We can't control that here, but the state of Oklahoma also spends money, and you have departments who will squander money so that they don't get it taken away from them the following year, just like the federal government. So at the end of the day, it's human nature that you have to wrestle against. And there will be no limiting the number of fights that you can get into on behalf of your constituents. And if you don't give up, you'll go back being proud of who you were when you left as you were when you got there. But if you start compromising, eventually they say, well, you compromise here, you got to compromise there, and eventually you're going to be representing lobbyists and state agencies instead of the people who sent you there.
Melissa Myers is at the head of the GOP in Tulsa, is asking you to send her the bill number so she can put it in the Facebook group, and then she'll send it to the elected officials in hopes to getting a co-author. So you might just put that in your cap.
Awesome.
Thinking cap.
Hi, Melissa. She's fantastic. She's been great to work with. I don't have a bill assigned, and I'm not sure when they're going to assign the bill numbers. That might not be until later, but just know it's the No Legislating While Drunk Act of 2026 until I get assigned a number.
The goal is to create more Shane Jett, so the Jets of the legislature are not in timeout by themselves.
Well, and I will tell you that we went from 4 and 5 to 12 and 15. So we're making progress, and it's the grassroots people like it's in your audience, Jenny, that is making the difference.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Oops, I forgot to read that. That's why the 2026 elections are going to be a nightmare for who runs and what's said. The lies will fly. And that's true. That's why we absolutely have to learn how to vet candidates. Indeed, Senator Shane Jett is spot on. There are good military members and bad ones. It all depends on your core principles. I need to keep Shane Jett. The leader of the woke mob is also a veteran. The leader of the woke mob is also a vet. Who is the leader of the woke mob, Roberta? Do you know? Zach Gary's been great. Logan in now too. So you do have some next year. You're going to have Brian Logan in there too, which is going to be good. So I do think that maybe, like you said, I think we're whittling them down. I think that people are understanding that what happens to them daily really originates in their backyard, not at the federal government level. And you might want to just riff on that for a few minutes, because I'll let you go, because I know you're oh, that's right, Erica K. That's right, Kane, right? Or Can, Eric and Can. So just riff on that for a little bit about the point of, why it's so important here as opposed to there.
Are you talking back home in your district?
Right. Why is it so much more important to be involved here in Oklahoma, in your school board, your city council, your representative, your senator here, rather than, because we hear a lot of people who say Trump's going to fix it all. Well, is Trump going to fix everything?
No, he can't. So yes, it's vital. It's at the local level. And the way our founding fathers created this country was for we, the people, to be the formidable and final authority. And so, I think 2020 was a formative year for a lot of people. A lot of people that were kind of coasting woke up and realized, if we do not take control of our destiny, somebody else is willing to shape it against us and drive it off the cliff. And so your school board elections are vital. Your municipal elections are vital. County elections are vital. Vet them. Figure out, are they Republican? Do they have conservative values? And I will tell you this, the Democrats have already figured this out. George Soros has already figured it out. He got better return on investment by getting DAs elected all over the United States, simply because it was easy for him to get someone elected. It was cheaper, and he could create more chaos and mayhem in local communities by having DAs that wouldn't enforce the law or would champion criminal justice reform that was just designed to keep criminals on the street and frustrate law-abiding citizens. So people target us at the local level. In fact, in Colorado, that used to be a red state, their homosexual governor wrote a plan on how to, and it may have been retrospectively, but their plan was how to turn a red state blue. And what they did was they started at nonpartisan elections, mayor level, and moved up to the county level. And then with that power broker base of nonpartisan election, then got them in the House, and then got them in the state Senate, and then got them for Congress. And now it looks like Colorado is almost irredeemably blue. With pockets of red in it. And that's what they're trying to do in Oklahoma. They tried in Oklahoma City. They had in Tulsa, Norman. These municipal elections and these county elections are vital, because that's the power base that the Democrats are using to launch into state election and then eventually turn a red state blue. And Oklahoma is a young Republican state. 2004, when I was elected to the House of Representatives, that was the first time Republicans took control of the House in 80 years, and only for a 2-year period, 1921 to 1923, were the Republicans in control during our state history. And not until 2008 did the Republicans take control of the Senate. So we have been a new Republican state that's recently red. And some of the people haven't changed their values to actually be Republican. They've just simply re-registered. And then you have people moving in from out of state because we have low property taxes. They register as Republican when they get here so that they can vote in all the different elections, but they bring their blue values with them. We have to do a better job at policing ourselves and making sure that we're not voting for people who do not reflect our values.
So Melissa says, we the people have had enough, and we've had some really great ones step up to fight with us. 2020 was huge for my family. Okay, so we'll make this the last question. If you've got a question, we've got a huge audience. If you've got a question, throw it in here, because don't forget, Shane is with all of the girls at the state capitol. So let's let him go. So if you've got a question, throw it up here right away so we can get him to answer that. Ed has one. What's your next step after 2026, Senator Jett?
Well, I tell you, my wife and I talk about this pretty regularly, and more importantly, I talk to God about this, and I don't feel like that my time in politics is over. In leadership and investing in the state, I love the state. I love this nation. So I don't know what's next. Honestly, I have a lot of people that are trying to recruit me to run for governor, but I'm not moving until I know exactly what God would have me to do in the next step. I'm praying about it. But I plan on, if I'm not involved in the front line, I want to be behind the scenes helping. I'm not leaving the state. This is my home. And I'm going to try to empower as many people as possible, but I cannot run for reelection. I'm termed out in 2026. So I want to make sure. There's 15 people in my Senate district who have indicated they want to run for my open seat. Probably 7 will actually do it, perhaps maybe 5. So I want to make sure that when I leave, that I have a conservative that follows in my footsteps. But there are some unannounced conservatives that are looking at running for governor. So I'm anxious to see who that is. I want to make sure it's an actual Republican, not a fake Republican, not an establishment Republican. So that kind of narrows the field a little bit. I love Jake Merrick. He is a fantastic human being that shares my values. There are others that are looking at running as well. But at the end of the day, I'm looking for conservatives who fear God and respect the public and the taxpayer before I'll put my name behind anybody. So that's a long answer for I don't know what I'm doing next, and I'm praying about it.
So here's a suggestion for you. I don't think Langford is spelled like that, though. I think he just may have accidentally missed.
Yeah, autocorrect. I always blame it on autocorrect.
All right. So anything else, and we'll let you hop off of here. Quick, last call for questions. Last call. Big audience. Last question. Okay, if we'll wait a second, because there's always a lag. I don't know for what reason. I guess it's just I don't know. I don't know electrical engineering, but I do know that we have a lag from, and it's quite pronounced, like from Rumble to YouTube to X. We have these huge gaps in how oh okay. Thank you. Senator Jett is awesome. Tell Esther, Sarah, and Raquel hello. Tell Anna, Esther, Sarah, and Raquel hello. Oops, one more. Oh, have fun with the girls, and thank you for answering our questions. So at that, I guess I will go ahead and let you go for today. Any last words?
Well, thank you, Jenny, for everything that you're doing in the trenches. And I will never forget that we were battle buddies in the making it illegal for critical race theory in our public schools. We made a difference. Kids are safer than they were when I got there. And it was collaboration with grassroots Republicans who had insight, who had passion. And so I'm always grateful to you. I love sharing with your audience. And 2026, I'm very optimistic that 2027, as a result of the 2026 election cycle, is going to usher in the era of the first time that the Senate will be truly a conservative legislative body. And we're more conservative than we were, but I believe 2027 is very promising for who this next set of grassroots, vetted, solid, conservative, Bible-believing legislators are coming. I believe that our best days are ahead of us.
Well, thank you again for being with us, and thank you again for all that you do. Hopefully we'll see you at the conference in November, and you'll be a part of that. We'll talk about that later. But tell the girls hello.
I certainly will.
And you guys have a safe time. And then as soon as you figure out what you're doing in 26, make sure you call me first.
Very good. You got it.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Shane. We really appreciate you very much, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Jenny. Bye all.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.